The ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine has entered a critical phase, with both sides engaged in a protracted war that shows no signs of resolution. As the situation on the ground becomes increasingly dire, it is essential to analyze Washington's endgame in Ukraine. This video explores the complexities of the conflict, the challenges faced by both Russia and Ukraine, and the role of the United States and its allies in shaping the future of the region.
Let me begin that I already predicted in early March last year that this war would go on for a long time, years indeed. This is the first anniversary, but probably not the last anniversary of ongoing conflict in Ukraine.
The stalemate. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine has reached a stalemate, with neither side able to achieve its stated territorial objectives through military means. While Russia claims certain regions of Ukraine as its own, the Ukrainian military has successfully defended key areas and pushed back Russian forces in some instances. The Russian military's attempts to seize control over the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions have been met with resistance and heavy losses. The Ukrainian military, on the other hand, has defied expectations and continues to hold its ground. However, both sides face significant challenges and limitations that make a decisive military victory unlikely in the near future.
Ukrainian delegation is bringing home significant security victory for the Ukraine, for our country, for our people, for our children. It opens for us absolutely new security opportunities, and I thank everyone who made it possible. Thank you, dear colleagues.
Impediments to progress. One of the significant impediments to achieving further progress on the ground is the heavily fortified positions of Russian forces along the likely axis of advance in the south. Open-source satellite images reveal extensive physical defenses, including trenches, barriers, and obstacles, making it challenging for Ukrainian forces to breach these defensive lines. Additionally, the Russian military's mobilization has addressed previous manpower problems and allowed them to defend vulnerable areas more effectively. The Ukrainian military, though resilient, lacks experience in offensive campaigns and faces shortages of critical munitions and equipment. These limitations on both sides suggest that neither Ukraine nor Russia will achieve their territorial objectives through military means in the foreseeable future.
When President Putin invaded Ukraine last year, he underestimated the bravery of the Ukrainian people, the courage of the Ukrainian forces, and the determination of the Ukrainian political leadership.
The Endgame Dilemma. The endgame in Ukraine presents a significant challenge for all parties involved. Ukraine's objective is clear. It seeks control over its internationally recognized territory, including Crimea and the parts of the Donbas region occupied by Russia since 2014. Russia's position, however, is less categorical, maintaining ambiguity about the exact borders of the regions it claims to have annexed. This ambiguity complicates the prospects of a comprehensive political settlement or peace treaty. The war is likely to end without a resolution to the territorial dispute, with both sides settling for a de facto line of control that falls short of their stated objectives. The long war scenario. A drawn-out hot war between Russia and Ukraine is the most likely outcome, given the history of similar conflicts. Studies indicate that when interstate wars last longer than a year, they tend to extend for over a decade on average. Even conflicts of shorter durations can be exceptionally destructive, as demonstrated by the Iran-Iraq War, which lasted almost 8 years and resulted in significant casualties and economic devastation. A prolonged war in Ukraine would have far-reaching consequences for the United States and its allies, including the risk of escalation, economic fallout, and strain on military resources.
So very few wars end in total utter defeat of one side or the other. Not the First World War, and this war is not going to end in the defeat of the Russians in Moscow, nor is it going to end in utter defeat of Ukrainian forces in Kiev. So it must end in some form of negotiated settlement.
Consequences for the United States and allies. A prolonged war between Russia and Ukraine poses significant challenges for the United States and its allies. A recent RAND study highlights that an extended conflict would maintain the risk of possible escalation, including the use of Russian nuclear weapons or a Russian-NATO war. Additionally, Ukraine would become heavily reliant on economic and military support from the West, placing a strain on Western countries' budgets and military readiness. The global economic fallout, including volatility in grain and energy prices, would persist, further complicating the situation. The United States would find it difficult to shift its focus to other priorities, and Russia's dependence on China would deepen. Although a prolonged war might weaken Russia to some extent, the costs far outweigh any potential benefits.
There is a full-fledged war going on in Europe, and there is no risk-free option. No risk-free option for NATO allies either.
The need for a strategy. While Western governments should continue supporting Ukraine's preparations for a counteroffensive, they must also adopt a comprehensive strategy for war termination. A decisive military victory is highly unlikely, and certain endgames are no longer plausible due to fundamental differences between Moscow and Kiev. Achieving a peace treaty, or comprehensive political settlement that normalizes relations between Russia and Ukraine, appears impossible in the current circumstances. It is crucial to acknowledge that the two countries will likely remain enemies long after the hot war ends. However, interstate wars of this intensity rarely come to a resolution without negotiations.
They are helping us, but still, we are living under different conditions, because we are in the conditions where survival matters and the partners are willing to support us to leave.
Difficulties in transformation. If the war continues, it will be exceedingly challenging to transform it back into a low-intensity localized conflict, similar to the one witnessed in the Donbas region from 2014 to 2022. The current front line stretches over 600 miles, with strikes on cities and targets far beyond the line. Both countries are mobilizing their resources, and the widespread impact of the war makes it difficult to confine the consequences to a particular geography. Ukraine's economy faces multiple challenges, including closed airspace, blocked ports, constant shelling of cities, a significant number of working-age men at the front lines, and millions of reluctant refugees. These factors make a return to the pre-war situation highly unlikely.
I think Prigozhin was speaking for a lot of people who were very dissatisfied with Gerasimov and Shoigu because they feel strongly that this Ukrainian war should be brought to a close. Let's stop it. The only way to stop it is to advance, to attack, and crush the enemy.
The plausible ending, an armistice agreement. Given the limitations and challenges faced by both sides, the most plausible ending to the conflict is an armistice agreement. An armistice is a durable ceasefire agreement that does not resolve political disputes, but effectively ends the hot war between Russia and Ukraine. Although it does not bridge the core issues of the conflict, such an agreement would establish a de facto ceasefire line and allow for a cessation of hostilities. Open channels of communication and continuous interaction between the parties involved can pave the way for future negotiations and the potential resolution of political disputes.
Today, the members of the G7 are launching a joint declaration of support for Ukraine to make it clear that our support will last long into the future.
Learning from history, the Korean Armistice. An archetypal case of an armistice agreement is the 1953 Korean Armistice. While North and South Korea are still technically at war and claim the entirety of the peninsula as their sovereign territory, the armistice has largely held. This example demonstrates that even without resolving political differences, a durable ceasefire can prevent further escalation and bloodshed. Similarly, an armistice agreement between Russia and Ukraine would not resolve the broader conflict, but would provide an opportunity for recovery and stability.
But we're looking for, let's say, a ceasefire. And at a ceasefire point, NATO could then play this really important role in stabilizing a ceasefire. But that ceasefire probably won't liberate all of Ukrainian territory. So
the role of the United States and allies. Although decisions made in Kyiv and Moscow will ultimately determine the outcome of the conflict, the United States and its allies can play a crucial role in shaping the endgame. While they cannot dictate terms to Ukraine or Russia, they can engage in close consultation with Ukraine and put forward their vision for a negotiated settlement. It is essential to begin discussions on the diplomatic track, parallel to the military efforts to assist Ukraine. Establishing a regular communication channel involving Ukraine, US allies, and Russia can facilitate continuous interaction and pave the way for future negotiations. The United States should appoint a special presidential envoy dedicated to conflict diplomacy, who can engage beyond the foreign ministries and lead these efforts effectively.
本日こうしてウクライナ支援に関する共同宣言を発表できることを大変嬉しく思っています。
I am pleased to be able to announce the joint declaration on support for Ukraine today.
Incentives and security commitments. In addition to diplomatic efforts, providing incentives and security commitments can help move the peace process forward. Security commitments to Ukraine, ensuring Kiev will not face Russia alone, should be part of the equation. The model of the U.S.-Israel 1975 Memorandum of Understanding, which emphasized the U.S. commitment to Israel's survival and security, can serve as inspiration. A similar assurance to Ukraine would enhance their sense of security, encourage private sector investment, and deter future Russian aggression. Reconstruction aid, accountability measures for Russia, and sustained military assistance would also be essential in supporting Ukraine's recovery and building a credible deterrent, making peace attractive. In addition to applying coercive pressure on Russia, the United States and its allies should explore ways to make peace a more attractive option. Conditional sanctions relief with snapback clauses for non-compliance can encourage compromise and provide incentives for reaching a negotiated settlement. Dialogue on broader European security issues can help minimize the chances of future crises with Russia. A comprehensive approach that combines coercion and diplomacy is necessary to achieve a sustainable peace.
How have the sanctions been helpful to Russia?
Well, they've managed to sell all of their energy products, all of their minerals, everything, agricultural products, through others at higher prices that have ultimately reached their target destination in Europe and other parts of the world anyhow.
The way forward. To initiate the diplomatic track effectively, the United States should establish a dedicated effort within its government focused on conflict diplomacy. The appointment of a special presidential envoy, who can engage beyond the foreign ministries, would be instrumental in leading these efforts. Informal discussions with Ukraine and among G7 and NATO allies about the endgame should begin, alongside the establishment of a regular communication channel involving all relevant parties. It is crucial to start these preparations early, as conflict diplomacy takes time, and the probability of success increases with adequate planning. Conclusion. In essence, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine is at a critical juncture. Achieving a decisive military victory is highly unlikely, and a prolonged war would have severe consequences for all parties involved. An armistice agreement, similar to the Korean armistice, presents a plausible ending that can provide stability and pave the way for recovery. While decisions made in Kyiv and Moscow will determine the outcome, the United States and its allies can play a pivotal role in shaping the endgame. Diplomatic efforts, incentives, security commitments, and a comprehensive approach combining coercion and diplomacy are necessary to achieve a sustainable peace. By initiating dialogue and preparing for negotiations, the international community can contribute to a future where Ukraine can recover, and the risk of further escalation is minimized. Thanks for watching. Please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe our channel.